Welcome to Billington Federal Cyber Bytes, sponsored by Cisco. It is my honor to welcome you to this fireside chat between Andy Stewart, National Security and Government Strategist with Cisco, who will interview Army Major General Garrett S. Yee, whom Andy will introduce shortly. We thank Cisco for sponsoring this important video series and appreciate Andy Stewart joining us again, this time to interview Major General Yee. Andy?
Thanks, Tom. It's great to be here on Billington Cyber Bytes with DISA's assistant to the director, Major General Garrett Yee. I'm Andy Stewart, National Security Strategist with Cisco, provider of DoD's Comply to Connect solution, the leader in Zero Trust solution, and the world's largest SD-WAN provider and cloud security pioneer with our market-leading SASE solutions. Today, we will discuss DISA's priorities and alignment with Zero Trust security and software-defined network architecture model, and how the deployment of these capabilities will enable the DoD's goals to integrate network and security solutions in the cloud and to enhance the protections of the end user devices. General, thank you so much for being here.
Well, good to be here, Andy, and thank you, Tom, for inviting me as well.
Let's jump in.
All right.
So this year, taking on General Skinner's Velocity of Action campaign, among many efforts, DISA has undertaken two major efforts to deliver a zero trust-based approach that evolves and modernizes the network. Can you describe these two efforts at a high level?
Sure. So, the idea of zero trust is not new. In fact, for many years, those of us in the cybersecurity business have talked about the importance of not trusting anyone on the network and ensuring that, that you as a person are talking to the other person at the other end of that connection. And so zero trust, I think, is an evolution or a maturation of cybersecurity within the network world. With that said, DISA is leveraging the zero trust reference architecture that was recently published this past May and come up with its version of zero trust way ahead for DISA, which in effect is for the department. The different services have their own zero trust efforts underway. But the zero trust effort that we have is titled or called Thunderdome, named Thunderdome. And the so what about this effort, which we're excited about, is that it really evolves the cybersecurity architecture from where it was with a network-centric defense model to a more holistic cybersecurity model. And I sometimes tell people, don't get caught up on the term zero trust because it conjures up a lot of thoughts and ideas in folks' mind, but think about the evolution of cybersecurity from a network-based model to a holistic model that includes today the cloud, which really wasn't around 10 years ago when we started building out these, monolithic, big security stacks. And I'll pause there for now because a little back and forth here.
Okay, sir, great. I appreciate the background. How will the agency take in rolling out these efforts?
So, for some time, as I said, we had this monolithic, hub and spoke network architecture and cybersecurity architecture that matched that. And the zero trust model that we have going forward is actually over time going to diminish those monolithic hubs and put security at the edge. What does that mean? That means we're going to leverage a couple of things that was mentioned at the intro. We're going to mention software-defined wide area networking, SD-WAN, right? And SD-WAN leverages, existing, in our case, government-provided network infrastructure for transport and commercial infrastructure to include SATCOM capabilities as well. It'll also leverage SASE, Secure Access Server Edge, which is something that you also mentioned at the beginning, that will not allow us to move security from those monolithic hubs to the edges, which means for us that we'll need to leverage, secure containers at the application and at the edge, as well as leveraging Comply to Connect, leveraging ICAM, identity, credential, and access management, as well as data analytics to help understand where the traffic is on the network, where the vulnerabilities are on the network, and how to optimize all of that.
Wow, awesome, sir. As DISA rolls out these capabilities, how do you envision the expansion and adoption of these capabilities in the out years?
So, great question. So, initially, we're going to do a pilot in the Pacific and in Europe. And in the Pacific is an area that we did not fully migrate to the joint regional security stacks, the GRSS stacks that we have in CONUS. So that's would have been the next place for us to roll out GRSS, but instead, we're going to leverage this opportunity to implement a zero trust reference architecture to support that area of the world.
Wow. And so what are the new security implications by moving off the JRSS approach and putting more capabilities at the edge, sir?
So it's the security where you need it. So when you think about it, this hub and spoke network architecture that has, big stacks regionally, and then very little security at the edge because all the security, for the most part, will go through those hubs, right? And we're distributing that security back to the edge, back to base, post, camps, and stations on one end, and then to the applications in the cloud where they reside, right? Kind of a different model, right? Before, we didn't need to distribute that security because we didn't have the cloud. The cloud capability and that migration to the cloud is driving much of that change. It's not the only thing that's driving that change, but it's driving much of the change because we have a big security stack within the DoDin, but the cloud, when you think about it, is kind of outside the DoDin, right? So why would you go from, the endpoint, we're here in Washington, D.C., to a security stack maybe, 500 miles away, and then to a cloud provider access point, maybe 300 miles away somewhere else, where we can go straight from the endpoint, just Washington, D.C., straight to that cloud access point.
Interesting. And so you mentioned SD-WAN previously, and so how will that work in the hybrid cloud environment, as you said, for users who need to connect not only to applications and services, say, in the public cloud, but also back on the DoDin private cloud?
So conceptually, SD-WAN will allow us, let's say we're here in Washington, D.C., to leverage the government-provided network infrastructure to a place that, we're heading towards, or if that pathway is shut down, leverage a commercial alternate route to get there. So nothing different than maybe basic networking sounding principles, but in a way that through software allows us to do that more seamlessly. In the past, it would have been possible, absolutely. Your one path shut down, and then you're going to contract for another capability, which would take time. Here, the concept is you always have that availability where you didn't have that before.
So there's a lot more agility, a lot more flexibility. As you mentioned, you're leveraging existing capabilities like Comply to Connect and a modern approach to ICAM as fundamental sort of building blocks to software-defined networking, zero trust, SASE. How are these efforts, the existing capabilities, being leveraged?
So the good news is, Andy, that whether it be ICAM or Comply to Connect, those are not new to us in the department. And so those are efforts that have been underway for some time. So what's different for us primarily is the SD-WAN and SASE portion of that. But there's more work to be done on both ICAM and Comply to Connect. But the good news is those have been on the path for a little while.
I want to come back to the network modernization and your point about enhancing SecDevOps, particularly department's ability to deliver secure containers and modern applications. Can you address that for this new technology?
Yes, right. So there's a lot of goodness here that I think has evolved over the past maybe, I would say, 2 or 3 years. DevOps and then DevSecOps is not brand new to us, but it's been maturing, and we've seen recently the ability to leverage some of the work that's been done in that area because of the adoption and maturation of our cloud capability, right? That's the idea. And the cloud is the game changer, I think, over time for us to be able to do things that we couldn't do before, replicating environments, replicating secure environments that have already been, approved with the, authority to connect, right? So the whole idea of being then able to take that replicated, environment with an ATO, and then add to that, and then work on the vulnerability and security of the delta that you put on top of that, right? And that enables us to do so much more because the cloud can expand at scale in a way that we couldn't do that with on-prem hardware alone. So that's kind of the so what of us to be able to leverage that.
Awesome, sir. Really sounds like you're focused on greater agility, greater speed, capability, delivery. Anything else to add, sir?
Well, it's, would be remiss if I didn't mention, Lieutenant General Skinner, our DISA director, has really been driving a lot of this positive energy to move forward, to be able to be adaptable, to support the warfighter. Our executive deputy director, Chris Barnhurst, also just a dynamic leader who's really helped to drive some of this effort forward in concert with the Department of Defense. And so didn't want to leave this session without mentioning those two leaders in our organization that are doing just great work for us. And so, Andy, thank you for asking me.
Sir, as we bring a lot of these new modern capabilities to bear, what are the implications for the DoD workforce?
Nothing new. We are challenged to find, the talent that we need. We are, literally in the same space as private industry in terms of competition for talent. And so the good news is, if you're a college graduate and you have some skills, there are opportunities. And I just throw this pitch out there that although there are a lot of great opportunities in the private sector, we'd ask you that you consider public service and join us either as a civilian or in the military for a period of time and help our nation out with national security. So I'm asking you, the public out there, for your consideration and thinking about public service as an option.
Awesome, sir. It seems like back in the day, we used to have network operators and defense as separate workforces. It seems with these capabilities that we're bringing together, those workforces are two separate camps are coming a lot tighter, a lot closer together. We're seeing that in industry. Are you seeing that in DoD as well?
We're seeing a number of things. First of all, the workforce that we're getting that are coming out of college are just, so on the ball. And so they're able to take a lot of stuff in and be comfortable in that always on environment, which includes learning about different things and not being so stovepiped. At the same time, though, so much of what we're doing today is also specialized. And so there are many specialized opportunities out there as well. So you never know, that thing that you like, that thing that you work on, that thing that you are always focused on might be something that we need in the U.S. government.
Awesome, sir. Thank you. Thank you for your time, General Yee. Back to you, Tom.
Thanks very much. It's been an honor to have Andy Stewart interview Major General Yee on this topic of critical importance to our national security. We appreciate Cisco for making this possible, and thank you for joining us for this Billington Federal Cyber Bite sponsored by Cisco.